Nice to see you all. This is Prosal's third ever online event. I'm gonna have to stop doing the number count at some point, but I'm still doing it. It's third ever online event. This is a proposal writing workshop with our expert proposal friend and writer, Marianne Boules. In a second, I'll be introducing myself and I'll cover what we'll be talking about today. Like I mentioned, while I'm doing this short introduction, if you could introduce yourselves in the chat, sharing who you are, where you're calling from, and what you're looking to get out of the session today, we very much appreciate that. For those of you who don't know, I'm Alfredo. I am the COO and the co-founder of Prosal. And if you're not part of our community and you're new to our sessions and our events, Prosal is an RFP platform and business development community that makes it easy for agencies and consultants of all backgrounds and all sizes to find and win new clients from requests for proposals or RFPs. Unlike legacy aggregators and referral platforms that take up to 20% in project fees, Prosal is the only platform that vets and shares high-quality RFPs and an amazing UI and UX interface. And we provide you with the resources and the educational opportunities like this event to win those RFPs. Before Prosal, I was in the same position as many of you. I was, and I still am, the founder and president of Allras Digital, a digital communications agency that serves environmental organizations like nonprofits and foundations. And in working on Allras Digital and in launching in Prosal and getting to know so many of you that are with us here today, one thing has very much stood out that probably won't come as a surprise to anyone. RFPs are tough. They are very difficult to respond to. They're even more difficult to get a return on, whether that return is a hard win or a soft win, like an interview, feedback, or a new connection. And I get it. I have felt this way when I was applying to my first few RFPs, and even after winning several of them, I was still so intimidated when it came to applying, following up, asking for feedback, especially when I didn't get the response I wanted. So we've heard those requests, and to help you improve your ability to compete for RFPs, this event and others like it are a response to those requests. So I'm very excited to be joined today by Marianne Boules, the founder of Boules Consulting, a social impact consulting firm specializing in grant writing, administration, and technical assistance support for mission-driven organizations. Marianne has helped her client win over $52 million in the RFP process. And today we'll be hearing from her on a few different things like how to qualify and evaluate RFPs effectively, the fundamental elements and components of an outstanding proposal, and real-world examples into choices around language, presentation, and content. While Marianne is speaking, we'll be monitoring the chat for comments and questions, and we do have time at the end of the session for Q&A. We'll also be doing a follow-up email tomorrow with the recording of this session, as well as the slides and a few other resources that will come up. So if you do have questions around any of that, throw them in the chat. We'll be answering them as much as we can. And with that, on to the main event. Marianne, I pass the baton on to you.
Thank you, Alfredo. Hi, everybody. So glad to be here and so thankful for you to take your time out and learn about this very daunting but very learnable process. As Alfredo mentioned, my name is Marianne, and I hope that you have your notebooks ready because this lecture is jam-packed. In fact, we might not be able to get through it all because I want the Q&A, but you will have access to these slides as Alfredo mentioned. So I started my company, Boules Consulting, in 2018. Since then, as he's mentioned, we've raised $52 million in both grants and government contracts. Our mission is to help the helpers build and scale their programs, products, and services that really lead and make an impact in our communities. We mainly work with social enterprises, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies, which we get through contracts. So we practice what we preach. We do exactly what we talk about. And we just have several main services. So we help small businesses obtain their certifications, such as their women-owned business or their state certifications. We help them prepare for funding. Sometimes that means getting contract ready, such as building their infrastructure, like having the right SOPs in place, maybe even referring, if you have a process that's really amazing, maybe referring you out to a trademark lawyer to start building out your business, or just research, helping you find and vet the right opportunities, which we're going to talk about today. And then we actually do the proposal writing for you. So I am a writer by trade. And so the main chunk of work I say that we do is the actual solicitation analysis and proposal packaging. And then even for some of our clients, especially new businesses who maybe have their first government contract, we'll actually be a sub to help you manage it and make sure that it gets to the finish line. So we really do everything from the beginning to the end to kind of help support you and prop you so we can lead with that mission, which is that you'll make a difference. So we have 3 main objectives today. The first one is, like Alfredo mentioned, how to evaluate a potential opportunity and how to make a effective go, no-go decision. Second, we're going to talk about the fundamental elements and components of an outstanding proposal, and that's probably going to be the major chunk of what we're going to talk about, which is the writing and the storytelling. And then finally, we're going to provide real-world insights and choices around languages, presentation, and content. Specifically, we have real-life examples of winning proposals. They are all given to this lecture today by Prosal, and you can access the full winning proposals on Prosal's website. So let's say that you were researching, looking up bids on Prosal, and you found a very exciting opportunity. Just the title alone got you excited about the possibilities. Now what? What do you do next? Very simple. You're going to conduct a 6-phase evaluation process. You're going to review the solicitation using these 6 phases. And I have a freebie that has this exact checklist and the questions you need to ask yourself as you go through the solicitation. So the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, are you eligible? Eligibility can look like different things, especially for my social enterprise clients. Sometimes they'll want opportunities that only nonprofits can apply for. But sometimes it can even be a little bit broader than that. For example, maybe they want someone who has a very specific set of certifications and a very specific set of insurances that you don't have. There's 2 reasons why you're not eligible. First, because you don't have what they're asking for, and it's very specific. And then second, they've most likely hotwired that RFP to an incumbent. So someone who already has won this RFP in the past, and they're just writing it to make it so hard for anyone to win other than the person they have in mind. And so you'll see me talk a lot about strategy. When you're conducting your review of a solicitation, you need to think strategically. Why are they asking for these things? And sometimes even because I focus mainly on government contracts, it helps to focus on legislation. So look at the legislation that's supporting this solicitation and how and why you may or may not be eligible as well. So step number 1, can you even apply? Can you even apply? That's step 1. If the answer is yes, you move on to step 2. Do you have enough time? This happens to me all the time. People who are not in the proposal writing space severely underestimate the amount of time, resources, and brain power it takes to put out a good proposal. Literally last week, I had someone email me asking if I could write a $250,000 proposal for them that's due today. And it was on Friday of last week. I had someone else actually contact me for the same proposal over a month ago, and I've been working on it ever since. And when I told him no, he was like, what? It's just copy paste, right? Yes, I could copy paste, but you are just wasting your time. You're wasting my time, and we're wasting money because you are competing with people who've taken the full length of time to actually craft a good, strong proposal. And again, that's why it's good to have proactive research, because his was a fault of being reactive. he found the opportunity weeks after. But if you have a proactive research process in place, going so far even to look for opportunities before they've even been awarded, such as an RFI, before it becomes an RFP. And if you have a question about what I just said, put it in the chat and we'll answer it in the Q&A. Then you will have adequate time to write a truly competitive proposal. So step one is, do you have enough time? Sorry, step two is, do you have enough time? If the answer is yes, then we go to number 3. This one is a bit more abstract, but the first two are they make perfect sense. It's very concrete, but purpose, I would say, is even more important, which is, do your objectives align? A lot of times people will come to me wanting an RFP because they see the number and the dollar signs in their eyes light up. And the RFP is in the industry, but it's actually tangential to what they do. So a real life example, again, is someone I know who runs a janitorial services company. And she wanted to go after a multi-million-dollar janitorial supplies company. So basically the municipality would purchase janitorial products from her company. Here's why it's a very bad idea. First, when you are not mission driven, even if you're not actually social impact, like again, just a janitorial service company, if your company is not mission driven and you're constantly chasing money, you will never scale. It's just smart business to be focused on with the end in mind and go after it. So that's one. The second thing is, if she, let's say, were to, God forbid, actually win this contract, now she spent how many years building up a strong janitorial services company. Now she has to build, in like 2 or 3 months before the contract kicks in, an entire new business to support her products company. And that is like the amount and the pace at which she's going to have to scale can crush her. I'm not saying don't go after tangential, RFPs, but it does have to be intentional. So if she were to intentionally expand horizontally, so she's scaling horizontally, then it's a good option. But you have to be honest with yourself. Does this fit your end goal? And again, taking it back, this is why a business plan is so important. If you are narrowed in and dialed in on what your business is, you will immediately be able to tell when an RFP truly fits your objectives, or when it sort of fits, but it's not quite there. This is the next question, which is feasibility. So feasibility, again, is a bit abstract. Yet, let's say you have the resources to write it. Great. Do you have the resources to run it? Again, this can crush you. So I'll give you an example. Let's just use the same janitorial services company. I just use that because that's an industry most people understand on some level, because we interact with janitors pretty much every day. So if you are a janitorial services company and you are a team of 2 people and you win a $550,000 contract to manage all 5 different buildings in your city, can you do it? Do you have the HR system in place to hire? Or do you at least have some leeway, like maybe you can ask for a 6-month runway so that you can scale? Or do they need it right now and it's urgent services? This is where you need to think again critically about your scalability. Some people can scale quickly, like Mark Zuckerberg, what does he say? Build fast and break things, or something like that. Sure, that can work, but I won't touch Facebook because it's successful, but in general, smart scaling, sustainable scaling lasts so much longer than, running around with our hair on fire. And also, I don't want you to hate the process. Like, if you do this where you get yourself into a huge situation with a government contract, maybe you'll never want a government contract again, not knowing that it wasn't the right fit. So, and I want you to keep doing this because this is a really good source of business. And then the next thing is budget. And I would actually say this goes hand in hand with feasibility. And I'll give you an example. What they're asking for, is it worth your time and money? And here's why. I had a client. He won a $350,000 contract. which was amazing because they were a $50,000 business. So they went from 50 to 350,000, which already, again, going back to feasibility, is very hard to manage. What made it harder to manage is they gave her $10,000 to manage a $350,000 business. So you can imagine, that's, by the way, criminal. That was wrong. That was criminal. That they should not have done that, because they were a nonprofit, so they took advantage of that. But in general, that is very bad business. $10,000 for a $350,000 project, absolutely not. She ended up going in the negative. And she ended up working 80-hour weeks because she couldn't afford to hire anyone to manage this contract. So she had to do it plus her CEO duties. And they had to use their $50,000 that they were making regularly to actually administrate this $350,000 program. So is it worth the money? Are you going to make a profit margin? Is it going to lead to your business? That being said, I will say, like, if she had done it strategically, it could have worked out. Like, sometimes, like when you're trying to get your foot in the door, you take what you can get, even if you operate at a loss, because you know that it's going to lead to something better in the future. That's fine. But they ended up renewing that contract again the year after, and for the same amount, just because they kind of had their hands tied at that point. So is it worth your while? And then we have finally requirements. Do you have what they need, and can you meet minimum responsiveness? Again, so this again kind of goes hand in hand with time too. Do you have enough time? Sometimes they'll want documents from you that take forever to put together. And in which case it's not worth doing all this work only to come to action item F, and you find out that you don't have that one document and we're down to the wire. So it's good to keep track of everything you need beforehand. Make sure you have everything you need beforehand. Just some examples of like smaller businesses that I've run into is like they need a P&L signed by a certified CPA, and the small business does not do business with the CPA. The CPA did not want, they called a million CPAs. None of them wanted to work with them because they don't know the accounting of that business, so they don't feel comfortable putting their name on that company's P&L. So it's good to keep track of everything you need before you ever start writing, so you don't waste your time. And if you don't have it, you make a decision. Either you're going to pass on this and bookmark it that this is something that your industry typically needs, or you're going to take the adequate time you need to actually get it done. So if you answer yes to all of these, the next step is to craft your strategy. And I talk about strategy a lot because I think it's like, again, people think proposal writing is copy and pasting. It's not, as you'll see from today's lecture. So the first thing I look at is the evaluation criteria, if they have it. To me, the evaluation criteria when it's on a solicitation is a superpower because they are telling you exactly what they're looking for. So look at the evaluation criteria and see if you can strategize your answer to match that evaluation criteria to a T. Can you score a 5 on each of can you score 100% on each of these items? Second, attend meetings. So if they even if it's non-mandatory or mandatory, just attend them anyways. Go to all the webinars for many reasons. First, you're gaining insider knowledge, which is invaluable, and you're also building relationships. And they're seeing you when you come to all of these events. They see you, and they're going to remember you because governments, at their core, are risk averse. They will do anything they can. It's taxpayer money that they're dealing with. And so in general, they don't like to they're not venture capitalists. They're not going to just throw money and see what happens. They like to see people who are reliable and dependable. And so if you come to everything, they're going to be like, that person is dependable. They're reliable. They show up I can always rely that they'll be there. And then finally, build relationships. Use these opportunities where you attend meetings, or even like, let's say you get feedback from a proposal you lost. Use that to leverage a relationship with the person. And I'll give you a personal example. I submitted a proposal in response to a RFP, and I did not get it. I found the contract analyst and I emailed him and asked him. He called me within 2 days. I just asked him, can you tell me why I didn't get it? I'd love some feedback. He called me within 2 days and he was like, what's your name? Like, and then he read my proposal and he was like, it's weird that you didn't get this. Let me see what I can do. And within like 6 months, I am now the official contractor for that county. And I didn't even really like, I don't know what he did on his side, but he was able to bypass the entire solicitation process. Maybe he used what I submitted. But just from me just picking up the phone and making a call. So relationships are very important. And then finally, team up. This one is my favorite. I am a big proponent of collaboration over competition. When you are competing over pennies. When you are collaborating, you're competing together for millions of dollars. So because you're not looking for breadcrumbs anymore, right? You're putting it together and making the whole bread. I'll give you again a personal example. I was able to win a contract with the entire California State University system, which is huge, 23 campuses in one of the biggest states. I would have never have been able to have won it on my own for the reason that I mentioned, which is feasibility. My business is a team of 10 people. No way we can service the entire Cal State system. But we combined our efforts with 3 other small businesses and we won. And just last week, again, I did the same thing and we won a $1.2 million contract from the County of San Diego. Same exact reason. It was me and 3 other businesses. We put our resources together. By ourselves, we couldn't, but together we're formidable. And so look for for teams. This is why the Prosal Slack is yet another invaluable tool, because you can most likely find amazing partners to team up with on solicitations and proposals. Okay, so that was what the go no go process. Now we could actually talk about writing. First things first is proposal writing is sales. And why do I say this? Because a good proposal writer is someone who can effectively blend effective and compelling storytelling that gets the reader on the other side excited. Not only that, but they have to combine the practical ability to build a project and then communicate its steps from a financial, administrative, evaluative, and technical point of view. Sounds hard, but let's go back to the sales analogy. Let's say you're a salesperson. Your first day as a salesperson, maybe you make 100 calls, and if you're lucky, you get 1 hit. Not even maybe like a conversion, just someone who doesn't hang up on you. By year 10, you as a salesperson, you will have refined your sales process so well that you will be able to maybe get a conversion, an actual client who's paying 1 out of every 5 calls. So it is a science that you can learn, and it is an iterative process that you can improve on. So what we're going to talk about is some ways that you can improve on. First critical error that I see that every amateur or brand new writer does is they make themselves the hero and they make the funder or the decision maker the guide. This is a grave error. So this is a book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It is probably like one of the hallmarks of the marketing world. Like everybody in marketing is like, read this book, read this book. I think it has a lot of applicability to the proposal writing industry. And what he's saying is, so basically, we are all the characters of we're all the heroes of our own story. When you are writing from a sales perspective, why in the world are you selling yourself as the hero, right? Sales is to win the other person over. To win the other person over means you have to recognize them as the hero. And so really like a very good proposal will actually on the high level from a bird's eye view will follow the hero's journey. So in the book he has like the 7 steps, the 7 elements of great storytelling. So it's a character who has a problem. They meet the guide. The guide gives them a plan or a scope of work, as we would call it, calls them to action that ends in success and helps them avoid failure. And so what you should be doing when you're writing is instead of saying we can, we will, or depends on the language that you use, but really what you should be doing is putting the agency as the hero. So my favorite examples are Frodo, Gandalf, Harry Potter, Dumbledore, because those are just so two very archetypical stories. Frodo is the hero who goes on the hero's journey. Gandalf is the one who helps him get there. Harry Potter goes on the hero's journey, and Dumbledore is the one who helps him get there. So just always think from that perspective. Are you making yourself the hero in your writing, or are you making the agency the hero? And I've seen some very, very, very good proposals. I wish I could show them to you from clients who have nailed this. Then I will, again, talking about a bird's eye view of proposal writing, taking it back to high school. If you remember the 5 W's and 1 H, this is why when teenagers ask me what I do for a living and I'm too lazy to explain, I just say I write very complicated English essays for a living. It's because of the 5 W's and 1 H. So who are you? What are you trying to achieve? Where will you operate? Why are you doing this? And how are you going to do this? If you answer all of these questions, you have a strong, strong proposal. I should say, if you answer them succinctly and clearly, you have a very strong proposal because the story is there. So who are you? The first thing for who are you is to demonstrate your qualifications. The goal of this question is to demonstrate that you and your company are unequivocally the best people for the job. And so just again, a plug for Prosal, when I was reading through the proposals that they have, all of them hit this to a T, which is why they won. And they did this through several ways, through testimonials, for example. They clearly demonstrate their lived experience, and they clearly outlined their unique value proposition and unique advantage and their competitive advantage. So they clearly showed that they were the best people for the job. When you are trying to talk about what you're trying to achieve, this is your goals. And again, this is where the hero comes in. You're not going to be talking about your personal goals. You're going to actually shape your mission. I know what I said about like making sure everything fits your mission, and it should. But when you're writing, you're going to actually shape your mission and vision to fit their vision and mission. You're going to show contract alignment. You want to prove that your goals and their goals are one and the same. And that also includes the project scope too. So how does your process enable them to get what they want? Where will you operate? So this is just the set, like again, thinking story. This is the setting, your location, or where the project will be deployed. And again, I want to talk about strategy here for a little bit. Again, governments, when they're giving contracts, it's with taxpayer money. They like to fund local. So if you are local, make sure that you make that very clear. I had a client win like a $300,000 very competitive contract in Long Beach because she had a whole page dedicated to her about her life in Long Beach and how her husband's from Long Beach and how like she went to school in Long Beach and it's a Long Beach, Long Beach, Long Beach. So it's and then so local, like using that. Then again, let's say that you're not from that area, then maybe this is where a writing finesse can come in to show that you know the area very well and that you've worked in the area a lot and you're very familiar with the area. So we would finesse that. And then finally, because again, I work with social impact, if there's a priority population area of interest, you would also kind of talk about that area. And that's where, again, lived experience comes in. So back to the Long Beach, they were serving the Cambodian community. So, and her husband is a Cambodian refugee. So she talked a lot about that as well. So like proving the lived experience that you have to help that priority population and showing that you really understand that priority population or areas of interest. And then we have the why are you doing this, the final W, which is first, we're going to develop a strong case for why you are the right person for the job. What is your unique value proposition? Maybe even case studies to support your UVP. So think about even this this lecture that I'm doing. Every time I talk about something, I bring up an example, right? I have a case study to prove my point. So what we're going to do is you're going to say you're the best person for the job and why, and then you're going to give some very good examples, maybe even back it up with some references of why you're the right person for the job. And yes, like I said, strong references. Then we have the how. This is really the meat, like for me, usually this is the scope of work, right? The how should detail the exact actionable steps you will take to make your project or idea or product or service or what have you happen. It should have a timeline attached to each step, a major milestone that you project to hit and when, and even expected deliverables and outcomes as a result of each step. Make sure that the outcomes match their goal outcomes. Again, going back to the legislation, that's where like some of that research comes in hand. See what the overall goal, like beyond the solicitation, even what do they want as a result, and make sure that that's clear. And again, the proposals on Prosal have really strong examples of deliverables and outcomes. And the last thing I'll say about this, when it comes to the scope of work, I noticed this is usually the weakest part of the proposal. And it's because I think people have a hard time writing their process if their process has not been written down before. And that's why a big goal of mine is to help small businesses get ready. So helping them, for example, build their SOPs and their business plans so that this part can come a bit more naturally because they have a content library from which to work. Okay, so that was everything about the 5 W's and 1H and the building a story. That's all about the story side of proposal writing. Because remember, proposal writing is your ability to combine very strong storytelling with very technical, data-driven, outcome-driven content. So we talked about the story side. Now let's talk about the technical aspects of proposal writing. So first things first, we have the project overview, also called an executive summary or introduction. So if you remembered what I just went over, the 5 W's and 1H, your executive summary, the perfect executive summary takes the heaviest hitter from each of those categories. So let's see here, your strongest like your strongest, your UVP, basically what you're trying to achieve. You take what they want overall and you put it back to them. Your strongest where, your strongest why, and your strongest how. Like it should be very punchy. Then taking it back to high school, remember when we would talk about introduction paragraphs, how there's a hook and a connector and the rationale. Kind of the same thing. Like because and again, you know that statistic how when you're interviewing for a job, within the first 3 seconds, the interviewer will know if they like you or not. Think of the executive summary as the same thing. This sets the tone for the rest of the proposal, so it has to be your strongest hitter. I usually will not write the summary until I finish everything else and I actually edit and review and finalize everything else, because then I know I have the strongest language that I could build on for the executive summary. And for me, again, like the goal for me is to get the reader excited. I want the reader, because as a reviewer, as someone who's reviewed, proposals can get mind-numbingly boring. And if you drone on and on and on, they will ding you for that. I literally just sat on a feedback with a client yesterday as a reviewer, showing them that someone had actually dinged them half a point because they were droning on and on. And so, but if you get them excited in the executive summary, even if the rest is boring, you've primed them, like think psychologically, you've primed them to like the rest of your proposal. And so here is an example of an executive summary from Prosal, from the Prosal website, for the Center of Public Safety Excellence. So they have their who, what they do, their mission. Oh, sorry, this is them giving it back to, they're telling the agency what they are. So the hero story, they're telling them who they are. Blue Sky Partners, here it is it's what they do, their expertise. They've served over 50 nonprofits since 2017. That's huge. What they do, and then they even break it down into their individual parts, like each team member, like not just the agency, but the team member has experience, and then what they want to do. And again, And again, they're giving it back to the client. They're just showing what the client wants, and they're showing them how they're going to achieve that for the client. Then we have the about. So about is more, again, about, I would say you do have to talk about yourself, but a very strong proposal, kind of like this, where you are also looping in the actual agency that you're bidding for into it. And so you have your introduction, your mission, your vision, DEI statement if needed, your certifications, etc. So just a quick few notes about the about section. This is where people think all you have to do is copy paste. Your about is your about. No, that is not true, because if you are really catering every word to the solicitation, your about, maybe some parts will be the same, but it will be different each time. So I'll just give you a very simple example. Like, I worked with a company that's a program evaluation firm. That's what it says on their website. They occasionally do needs assessments. So would I, as a proposal writer, applying for a needs assessment solicitation, would I just copy paste saying we're a program evaluation firm? No, because the person on the other side might not even know that they're very like closely related. I would say we are a needs assessment firm. This is just a very simple example. And we've worked with these clients doing this many needs assessments. And this is how we know how to do needs assessments. I would change everything about their proposal that I would have done for a program evaluation. I would have changed that to very needs assessment focus. So a very simple example, but that's why copying, pasting will not get you far. And that's why you also need detail, like very good attention to detail. I myself am not have good attention to detail, but I have people on my team who are, and we have several rounds of reviews to look for RFP competitiveness, and that's exactly why. Is every word we're writing, is it to the RFP? And so here's an example of an about that I really liked, done, I think, on PowerPoint. So you can tell just reading off of this, okay, so I think they're a very good example. Lutalika, they are a web dev firm. I'm sure they work beyond serving the LGBTQ community, but I'm sure that I didn't see the solicitation they applied for, by the way, but I'm sure that it was a solicitation for the LGBTQ community, because every sentence here, like every paragraph, they talk about their LGBTQ experience and nonprofits that they've worked with that serve the LGBTQ plus community. So this is a very good example of an about that loops in the decision maker and the funder and their goals. See, as an agency, we're empathetic, intuitive, and innovative. I love that. I'm sure they don't use those words for like an engineering firm, right? Like a really basic construction engineering firm. I'm sure we're disciplined and we're rigorous and we're so and so. Like they're using the right words to tell a story that the reader will like. Then we have the need. A great need section will create a sense of urgency. This is a huge problem and it needs to be fixed now. They know that it's a huge problem, right? That's why they're putting it out for you, but you have to show them that you recognize that. And then sometimes, again, depending on every solicitation is different. Sometimes you need to explain the problem that your project aims to address. Sometimes that means just giving it back to them. I think there was here, this is a good example. As you've identified, we have a critical need to implement new models of compensation that support our childcare workforce and thriving economies. So they pulled that from the solicitation, but they're showing the solicitation, the readers, that they know what they're doing. And then again, if possible, I would use, if you needed, you could even back it up with data. So a lot of times this can even be where a literature review takes place, like sometimes anecdotes from your client population, for example, or case studies, research data that zoom in on a high level view, quantitative, and person level view, qualitative. So an anecdote mixed with like a research paper, for example. And then you never want to leave a need hanging. You always want to end it with the solution. Like we have a critical need to implement these new models of compensation. the Melton Strategic Solutions is the solution. And so that's the other thing I was going to say is the solution is you. Your company is the solution. Do you see how, again, they're the hero in this just a simple paragraph, but the agency, the government or whoever they're applying for is the hero, and they are saving them as their guide. Positioned to assist you in paving the way for policy reform. Do you see, like, just very good writing? They're not saying we will pave the way for policy reform. They're saying we will help you because you need this. We will help you. We are the Gandalf to your Frodo. And then finally, the proposed solution. So it's to address the identified need. You will, in here, you're going to project your project's objectives, activities, and methods in detail. And you clearly explain how your solution will effectively address the need and the outcome of it. What is the change that is going to result from it? And then also provide examples that demonstrate the feasibility and potential impact of your proposed solution. So like, for example, let's say you have a tech company. You need to show that your tech company is the best solution to the problem you outlined in the need statement. And so I like this. This is a bit long, so you could just review it in the when you take the slides. But I thought this was a very good example of what a proposed solution looks like. And this is, by the way, just so you don't get confused, this paragraph right here is this top paragraph right here, and then here's the solution. And then finally, we have the scope of work. So the scope of work is an essential component of proposal narratives because it defines the tasks and deliverables and timelines that you will do. It is the thing that gives your proposal meat. It takes it from the abstract, like we can do this, to the concrete, to the tangible. This is exactly what we're going to do to achieve it. And so it usually includes tasks and activities, which is what you're going to do. Sometimes they'll, and this is another thing. So a lot of times for RFPs, I'll see that they give you the scope of work. Worst thing you could do is just copy and paste the scope of work and give it back to them. No, they want to see what they can get for their money. That scope of work, use it as an outline and make it robust. Add in your special sauce that's going to take that scope of work into something basic, into something amazing. And then you're also going to include key milestones, key deliverables, key deadlines. And a good timeline really helps the reader understand, like helps them to kind of wrap their mind around the program and how it's going to work. And then you also want to include roles and responsibilities. So like, especially if you have partners too, if you team up, who is going to do what, who is in charge of each deliverable, because then it also shows that you know how to manage and hold people accountable. And then sometimes this is not for everyone, but the project management approach. So what kind of tools you might use, methodologies, your systems for project planning, monitoring, evaluation as well. How are you going to ensure effective communication? How will you mitigate risk, quality control? These are all questions you may or might not answer depending on the strategy, your analysis of the solicitation. And so here's just a super basic example I created, incredibly basic, just to kind of give you an idea. Like this is for a pilot, a tech pilot that I worked with, and I just condensed it into a super basic version. Like secure an MOU with utility companies, identify the lab that you want to work at, begin first round of testing, complete outcomes report. Super simple. It was like, I think for a $50,000 testing voucher or something like that. But here's just an example, like it still hits everything, your activity, your timeline, and who's in charge. Here is a much better timeline from Prosal. And so again, maybe I might have changed this a little bit to be more intuitive, like in a table form, but you can't say it's not robust. It has everything. It's from discovery to launch, and everything in between. And it looks like, oh, you know what? I will say if you click on this, it'll take you to a Gantt chart, which is cool. But so like it's probably even more detailed. And then I believe this is the last one. And since we are almost out of time, budget narrative. So we assess for competitiveness, story-based justification of your line item budget, and demonstrate how the budget aligns with project objectives. Your budget needs to match what you say in the proposal. This is another big one. It's super simple. You just need someone to read at the end And make sure that if you said you're going to hire 2 people in the proposal, make sure that that's the not just like the actual cost of the people, but the recruitment, the HR, everything, the startup costs are all involved. And again, this is an example of what a good budget looks like. And a budget narrative kind of explains why you're asking for these. Some ask for budget narratives, some don't, but it's really just a narrative version of your budget. And then the last thing is sometimes they'll ask for justification. Like if you're asking for $35,000 for a person, you should explain why. Oh, it's because it's $25 an hour estimated at 0.5 FTE. So final thoughts. I know we're super late, so I'm just going to go through this. Writing is an iterative process. Do not be sad when you lose. Ask for feedback. You will get better. My first proposal, I cringe at that I wrote 5 years ago. I cringe. It was horrible. So it is an iterative process. Second, collaboration over competition. The old business model of us fighting for scraps is over. Forget about it and stay away from people who are like that. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You will scale more than you would have on your own. And relationships are everything. You can write the best proposal in the world, but if someone else has the relationship, there's nothing you can do to get your proposal to the other side. Relationships will be what gets your proposal to the other side. So with that, thank you. Do we have any time for questions, or did I go way over time?
No. You did great, Marianne. That was so awesome, so helpful, incredible. I see so many people just loving the content in the chat. I think someone like just wants to hire you outright from the webinar. Just but I did see some questions. I have some questions too, but I want to start with the questions from folks asking in the chat. And I know Whitney asked something early on. So I think you touched on this, but Whitney was asking, is there a way to recognize when an RFP might be hot-wired for someone already in mind, so we don't waste our time on it?
Yes. Sometimes, so I will be honest, sometimes it's really in the eligibility and requirements. So if they're asking for the most random certifications, you've been in your industry for years and they're asking for the most random certifications that make no sense as a combination, it's most likely hot wired. If they're asking for very random years of experience, like 13 years of experience, 13.5 years of experience in this super, super niche, like subsector of a subsector of your industry, it's probably hot wired. Sometimes you can't tell, so I will be honest, sometimes you can't tell. You'll apply and you'll find out that it was hot wired all along. Something you can do is looking at calling the contract analyst and say, is this a brand new RFP or is this a contract renewal? So that's something you can do. Sometimes they'll answer and sometimes they'll give a half answer. And so again, strategy and thinking, like, kind of read between the lines as they talk to you. But if they'll say, oh, it's a brand new proposal, a brand new solicitation, we've never done this before, it's definitely not hot wired. Does that
Awesome.
answer your question? Okay, good.
I think it does. So Chris asked, and I'm just going to answer this one outright. So Chris asked if there's any good examples of digital interactive proposal templates where you can have interactive links like the timeline example you provided. So Chris, I just shared 2 resources for you. The first one is a content library where you can actually purchase to download some of the proposals that Marianne had on her slides. We also have on here proposal templates that we've created at Prosal and that we found on other sites. Both of them have examples of what you're asking for, so I recommend that you check those out. And if those aren't helpful, then just shoot me an email. Happy to chat about that. Marianne, I wanted to ask you something about the meetings, because meetings is definitely one that's coming up in terms of like, how do you show off? How do you ask those smart questions? I think that's a question that I always get, and people seem to be reserved in that sense. So like the first step is just go to the meeting. Like, I think you're definitely right in that. But I wanted to ask you kind of a 2-part question, which is, first, when you're attending a meeting for like a pre-bid meeting or a conference meeting, what are generally smart questions to ask? Like those kind of general follow-up questions that are good to keep in mind. And the second part, and I think this is the more valuable part, is how do you even figure out what are the smart questions to shine and to show off that like I'm thinking about the right things?
Yeah, that is a great question. Very easy. Read the RFP before you go to the meeting and think about it. So think about like look like and it is I think there's a talent in there, and if you find someone who can do this, never let them go. Being able to read between the lines in an RFP, and kind of figuring out, are there any gaps? You can't figure out a gap if you barely understand what you're reading on the page, but if you can really come up with the whole picture in your mind, you'll be easily able to come up with the right questions to ask. That being said, I will say two things. First, relationship building is not my forte. It's not what I like. Like our proposal writing, I know inside and outside. Relationship building is something that's tangential to my business. I can only talk from my experience building relationships, not for my clients, but for myself. I think emotional intelligence plays a big role. Like I see people come to those meetings and they come in combative. And let me tell you why that's a really bad idea. I was at the Chamber of Commerce and I was actually on a panel with a contract analyst, and he said, I may not be able to help you win a proposal, but I can sure as hell make sure you never win a proposal. And so like so I think like don't come in combative and asking like for the oh gotcha questions. It's more like the right questions to show them that you are really that you're aligned with them and you're really thinking, how can I help them? Something or and also show them that you really know what like their community, right? Like for maybe let me give a concrete example. Like let's say I'll just use the Long Beach one. It was a solicitation to evaluate childcare, right? Let's say there wasn't a meeting, but let's say there was a meeting. You would go and say, I know that Long Beach really suffers like uniquely suffers from this mental health illness. Is this something we should bring into the proposal? And that'll show that you really know the population that they're serving as well. So those kinds of questions. And then, but the most important thing beyond just the content of the questions, I think, is the quality of the relationship. Like when I build relationships with my with funders and decision makers, I don't ask them for anything, right? That's bad. People don't like grimy salespeople. People don't like grimy salespeople. People like authentic relationships. So and so like I think that's also a talent in an iterative process, but building a relationship that's truly authentic. You're not asking for anything, you just kind of want to get to know them and learn from them as well.
I like that thought and that approach. I mean, it reminds me, I've heard a lot of agencies and consultants, and folks in the chat might agree, but they don't like being called vendors. And sometimes like the RFP will actually specify vendor. They feel like vendor is a dirty word. I think that applies also on the on a lot of the relationship side where folks are looking for partners. They're looking for someone to grow with. They don't want just that vendor relationship. And I think considering it in that mindset of how can I be your partner? How can I help you grow? Rather than what can I sell you can really
Yes.
choose how you're building that relationship.
Back to the hero, like you, when you're saying, how can I help you? You're making them the hero rather than what can I wring out of you? That's why people don't like salespeople, because you could just tell that they're just trying to like drain you for everything you're worth. So definitely don't come from, if there's any advice, don't come from that approach. That's my one advice.
Last question here from Estefania is how can they work with you or how can they get in touch with you? How can folks in here get in touch with you?
Just send me an email. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat, and I'll send you my website and we can, talk. Yeah, let me put it now. I think there's one more question too from Baron.
From Baron, yes. So Baron, I think if folks can hang on for a sec. So Baron's question, he's asking, how do you demonstrate cohesiveness and strength in a joint proposal when teaming up with one more other business? And I think you can maybe answer that from both sides, like from the perspective of the small business and the large business.
Follow-up question, with large and small, is it like the large is the prime and you're the sub?
I think let's go with that. Yeah.
Okay, so with large and sub, you really don't have much, like you can help, you could give them what they need, but you don't have much control unless they like are a very nice prime over what the proposal says, like how it's cohesive. But when you're partnering with a bunch of small people and there's less of a power imbalance, I say like being very clear on who is going to do what. Like first, yes, this person's in charge of this section, that person's in charge of that section, but there should also be someone who does the final read through, your strongest proposal writer, who makes sure that everything lines up, everything makes sense, you're telling a cohesive story. I would also, again, have someone at the end do an RFP analysis for proposal analysis for competitiveness. Like, is it hitting, because you can get disjointed, might forget the evaluation criteria. So making sure that everything kind of matches from the beginning of the proposal to the end. So one person to read through the whole thing.
Okay, awesome. I'm dropping, for the folks still in here, I'm dropping a survey in the chat. Marianne and I would love if y'all took that survey, because it helps us just continue to improve what we're delivering in these events and how we are as presenters. One final announcement is that if you upgrade before Tuesday, so before Spooky Halloween, you will be invited to a complimentary business development strategy session with myself. So again, if you upgrade to Premium Prosal, you will get the invite for that strategy session. We will not be offering strategy sessions anymore after October 31st. So do not wait to upgrade and book that call. Thank you to everyone in the that attended the live webinar. If you're watching online or if you're watching the recording, thank you as well for joining in. Really thrilled to have Marianne on here. Thank you, Marianne. I think this was incredibly valuable, and I'm really glad that we were able to put this together.
Thank you. This was super fun. Thank you for having me, and thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Everyone, have a wonderful rest of your day. Really look forward to catching up with y'all in the future.